The moment the wine hit his shirt, the entire room seemed to pause. A deep crimson stain spread slowly across the white fabric, dripping down like a mark that refused to be ignored. For a second, there was silence, just a brief, fragile second. And then came the laughter. Light at first, then louder, echoing through the grand hall filled with nearly 200 elite guests. Crystal glasses shimmered in the bright daylight, expensive suits blended with polished confidence, and yet in the middle of it all stood a man being quietly humiliated. Armin Vale didn't react. Not immediately. His fingers tightened slightly around the glass he was holding, but his expression remained calm. Almost too calm for a moment like this. The woman responsible, Selena Crow, barely flinched. Dressed in a flawless designer outfit, she carried the effortless arrogance of someone who had never been questioned. She glanced at him briefly, her lips curling into a faint, dismissive smile, as if what had just happened wasn't worth her attention. To her, it was nothing. Just an accident. Just another forgettable moment. But to Armin, it was something far more familiar. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and never judging someone too quickly, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Stories of Kindness 2.0. Because sometimes, the most powerful stories come from the quietest people. Armin slowly lowered his gaze, looking at the stains spreading across his shirt. The fabric clung slightly now, the wine soaking through, cold against his skin. Around him, whispers had already begun. Some assumed he was staff. Others thought he had somehow slipped into the event without an invitation. No one imagined the truth. No one ever did. The event itself was a daytime celebration, an exclusive gathering of powerful executives, investors, and media figures. The reason was simple but monumental. The signing of a billion-dollar deal that could redefine industries and elevate everyone involved. Every person in that room had a reason to be there. Every person, except, it seemed, Armin. At least, that's what they believed. Selena had already turned away, continuing her conversation as if nothing had happened. Her laughter blended easily back into the crowd, untouched, unaffected. To her, Armin was just another invisible figure, someone beneath notice, someone who didn't belong in her world. But Armin had spent his entire life in moments like this. He remembered being a child, standing in worn-out shoes while others laughed at his appearance. He remembered watching his mother work endlessly, her hands rough from labor, her spirit strong but quietly burdened. He remembered the doors that closed on him, the looks that judged him before he ever spoke a word. And he remembered the promise he made to himself. He would never let the world define his worth. Years later, he had built something extraordinary. Not overnight. Not easily. Every success had come with sacrifice, every step forward earned through resilience. He had learned to navigate rooms like this, not by blending in, but by observing, understanding, and waiting. Because real power didn't need to announce itself. It revealed itself at the right time. Armin reached for a napkin from a nearby table, calmly dabbing at the stain. His movements were steady, controlled, almost detached. There was no embarrassment on his face, no visible anger. Only a quiet composure that felt out of place in a moment designed to break someone. And slowly, that composure began to unsettle the room. A few people stopped laughing. Others glanced at him again, this time with curiosity instead of amusement. Because something didn't add up. The way he stood, the way he carried himself, it didn't match the image they had created in their minds. Across the hall, a massive digital screen displayed the company logos involved in the upcoming deal. Staff members moved efficiently, preparing for the official announcement. Cameras were being adjusted, microphones tested, and the stage was set for what was supposed to be the highlight of the event. The signing. The moment everything would become official. And at the center of it all was a name no one in the room had connected yet. Armin Vale. But he hadn't introduced himself. He hadn't corrected anyone. He hadn't defended his place. Because he didn't need to. The truth was already waiting. Selena, still unaware, continued enjoying the attention around her. People admired her confidence, her boldness, her ability to dominate any space she entered. She thrived in it. The control, the influence, the unquestioned authority. But control is fragile. And sometimes, it only takes one moment to shatter it. Armin finally lifted his gaze. His eyes scanned the room, not searching for validation, not looking for sympathy, but observing. understanding, remembering. Because this moment, this exact moment, was something he had lived through before. The difference was, this time, he wasn't powerless. He took a slow breath, adjusted his sleeve, and began walking. Not toward the exit, but toward the stage. At first, no one noticed. Then a few did. And gradually, the movement caught attention. The man they had just laughed at was walking with purpose, with confidence, with something they couldn't quite explain. The whispers started again, but this time, they carried a different tone. Confusion, curiosity, unease. Armin didn't stop. Each step brought him closer to the truth waiting to unfold, closer to the moment that would change everything. Because in just a few minutes, the host would step onto that stage and call out the name of the man who owned the deal, the man who held the future of every person in that room. And when that name echoed through the hall, the laughter would disappear, the smiles would fade, and the same people who judged him would realize exactly who they had humiliated. The room was still carrying traces of laughter when Armin stepped closer to the stage, but something had already begun to shift. It wasn't loud. It wasn't obvious, but it was there. A quiet tension, spreading slowly through the air like an unspoken realization waiting to take shape. The host adjusted his posture, stepping forward with a confident smile, completely unaware of the storm about to unfold. The bright daylight streamed through the tall glass walls, illuminating every face in the room. Faces that still held traces of amusement, judgment, and careless superiority. And then, the announcement began. The host spoke with pride, introducing the visionary behind the billion-dollar deal. The man who had built the foundation of the partnership. The one whose final approval meant everything. His words were filled with admiration, each sentence raising the anticipation in the room. Guests leaned in. Executives straightened their posture. Cameras turned toward the stage. Everyone was ready to witness power, but they weren't ready for the truth. Because when the host finally said the name, Armin Vale, time didn't just pause. It collapsed. For a moment, no one moved. No one reacted. It didn't make sense. The name echoed again in their minds, clashing with the image they had created just minutes ago. The man with the stained shirt, the one they had dismissed, the one they had laughed at. And then, Armin stepped forward. Fully visible, fully undeniable. The silence that followed was heavier than any noise that had filled the room before. Conversations died instantly. Smiles faded. Confidence shattered. The same people who had laughed now stood frozen, their expressions shifting from confusion to disbelief, to something far more uncomfortable. Regret. Across the room, Selena Crow felt her breath catch. Her mind struggled to process what her eyes were seeing. The man she had humiliated, the one she hadn't even considered worth acknowledging, was now standing on the stage, being introduced as the most powerful person in the room. Her world tilted. The confidence she wore so effortlessly just moments ago began to crack under the weight of reality. Armin stood calmly, his presence commanding attention without effort. The stain on his shirt was still visible, but now, it meant something different. It was no longer a mark of embarrassment. It was a symbol, a reflection of what had just happened, and everyone could see it. He didn't rush to speak. He let the silence settle. He let it grow, because sometimes silence teaches louder than words ever can. When he finally began, his voice was steady, grounded in something deeper than authority. He spoke about the journey behind the deal, not the numbers, not the success, but the struggle, the sleepless nights, the rejections, the moments when no one believed in him. He spoke about being overlooked, about being underestimated, about standing in rooms where people decided his worth before he even had a chance to prove it. And as he spoke, the room changed. People weren't just listening anymore. They were feeling it. Because suddenly, this wasn't just a business event. It was a mirror. Selena's chest tightened with every word. The memory of her actions replayed vividly in her mind. The wine, the laughter, the dismissal. What once felt insignificant now felt unbearable. She wanted to look away, but she couldn't, because for the first time, she was seeing herself clearly. Armin continued, not with anger, not with blame, but with truth. He didn't call anyone out. He didn't need to. The weight of his words was enough to reach every corner of the room. Then came the moment everyone had been waiting for. The decision. The billion-dollar deal. Armin paused, his gaze moving across the crowd slowly. Every person felt it. The anticipation. The tension. The silent hope that maybe, just maybe, they hadn't lost everything. And then his eyes stopped. On Selena. She felt it instantly. Her heart sank as their eyes met. She expected anger. She expected judgment. Maybe even humiliation. But what she saw instead was calm. Not forgiveness. Not weakness. Just calm. And somehow, that felt heavier than anything else. Armin took a breath and made his decision. The deal would go forward. A wave of relief spread through the room, but it didn't last long because he wasn't finished. He added a condition no one expected. Every company involved would commit to a new initiative, one focused on dignity, fairness, and opportunity for those often overlooked. Programs designed to support individuals who had faced silent struggles, people who had been judged without being understood. The room was stunned. This wasn't revenge. This wasn't punishment. This was transformation. Applause slowly began to rise. Not forced, not polite, but genuine. Because deep down, everyone understood what had just happened. They hadn't just witnessed power. They had witnessed character. Selena stood still, her thoughts racing, her confidence completely shaken. For the first time in her life, she realized that success without empathy was incomplete. Armin stepped away from the microphone, the applause echoing behind him. But he didn't stay. He didn't wait for recognition or praise. He simply walked forward, leaving behind a room full of people who would never forget what they had just experienced. Before this story ends, take a moment to share your thoughts. Have you ever judged someone too quickly or been judged without being understood? Your story matters more than you think. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Stories of Kindness 2.0. Because sometimes, the strongest people don't prove others wrong. They simply show them the truth.